So we watched 2 videos, and one of them was you doing your model for write their questions, and the other one was doing your model for how students should annotate think and search questions. When you watched both of those videos, what did you notice?
I don't think I gave an example for think and search. So I think I should add that. I think also with that class, so typically like I would do the question on the little the green thing, but that class doesn't have one.
Okay.
And so
on
like,
the dot cam.
yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't think of the name. But that class has like a different one, and it's weird. So like I don't typically do .cam, but I think like sometimes like it can be better for them to like see it and like see how I'm writing it. But I think like that situation specifically would have helped like if I gave an example for think and search.
What made you think that when you watched the 2 videos?
I think, but just not just the videos, but like I went back with and worked with Eduardo, and then like once I kind of like took it step by step with him, like he had a really good question and a really good answer, and so like I think like that helped me figure it out.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's what I want to point out to you. When I watched you do the teacher model and exemplar for the right there question, I was like, oh my God, great. And then you released them to do the think and search ones, but you didn't give them, you didn't model a paragraph read or where you identified it or how to craft that question.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed in my observation was it took the kids a lot longer to get started and pick up a pencil for the think and search question than it did for the right there question.
Yeah.
Yes, it's easier, but they also didn't have the exemplar there for them. So that's what I want to talk to you about. And then also too, you have like 2 SPED and 5 ELs in there. And so I think the action step for this is just creating a CFS, a clear CFS, one for the write their questions and one for the think and search questions, and how we can make those as an anchor chart. So those steps are right there, especially for those students, because out of the 10 kids you have in there, you have at least 7 kids that have they're either EL or SPED.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I want to talk to you through your thought process for these questions. So for a write their question, what is your thought process to identify a write their question in the text?
So the first thing that I do is, of course, just like read through the text, and then I kind of like ask myself like, okay, like what's a detail that I want to remember or that I need to remember about this, and then I pick my question from there, because the whole point of asking the questions is to help you understand and help you remember. So I think it's like asking those questions like, is there something that I don't understand, or is there something that I feel like I need to remember?
Okay.
And then I kind of like craft my question from there.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, because when I was walking around, the kid with the blonde bang, what's his name? Nelson's right there question was literally, what's the last word on this page? And I had to go back and tell him, well, Miss Young does want you to ask a literal question that you can find in the text, but is this important? Is this going to help the reader understand? So I think that's what we have to clearly map out for kids, where we want them to go, and a CFS is the best place, the best way.
I'm just like, he's the first kid that's done that.
Yeah, right. But it happens, right? And so I heard you say they need to read. They need to ask themselves, what is a detail that they need to know or want to remember or misunderstand? And then what's the next step?
And then it's like crafting that question. So is it a what question or a who question? So like you create the question and then the answer.
And what do you want them to do with the answer? Because I saw them doing something in their text.
So I've been doing it like partner, like, okay, like have your partner like find the answer to your question.
Okay.
But also like, I feel like for independent work, like even if they could just like underline it.
Cool. Okay. And you would do the same process for the think and search?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what this is what I've crafted from what you said. So CFS for a write their question, read silently. What is the detail I need to remember or that I want to know or need to remember or don't understand? Annotate a write their question, and they're using the 5W, the what, when, where, and why, and that can be answered in the text. And then underline the answer to your question.
Yes.
So for example, where does the story take place?
And
Yes.
you would underline, yes.
Okay. And then for a think and search question, they need to read silently. They need to, again, ask themselves what is a detail that they need to know or need to remember or misunderstand. They need to craft a think and search question that is a question that the answer is not found in the text and requires the reader to think deeply.
Yes.
Okay. And then they underline the question. So, for example, explain how a main character's attitude affected his relationship with his best friend.
Yeah, I think for think and search, we should like double underline, just
Double
so I
underline?
can like differentiate between the
Okay.
two.
So, like a coding. Okay. How do you feel about that CFS?
Good. I want to try it 6th period.
Okay. So I can come in 6th period and see it, and give you some feedback around it.
Okay.
What did you think, like, was the impact of you walking through the way that you do this in your head and then making a step-by-step process for it?
I think like just like me like talking it through like out loud, kind of like helped it like make sense, because like I don't necessarily talk through the steps in my head, like I just do it. And so like having to say it out loud like made it easier for it to be like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3.
Okay. So when we're thinking about these CFS, what is like an upcoming lesson, or we don't even have to go to tomorrow's lesson. Let's plug it in for 6th period. So let's go to your lesson. And this is the during portion
Yes.
of your lesson. Okay. So, and I'm gonna flip over to the view of your lesson plan. Thank you for submitting your student work too. It was like very well thought out, and I saw you like refer back to it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for
Such
those
a long
skills.
way with student work.
No, really, like I'm super proud of how far you've come. Because sometimes it can be overwhelming, and it's just like, kick that under the rug. Okay, so we need to do 2 things though. Because remember, you identified. What did you identify that you needed to do differently? Besides
the teacher model.
Yes. So I see
So
that
it
you
goes
plugged
down
in the
here.
first one. But
So I need a teacher model here.
yes.
And I'll just do the one that Eduardo came up with, because he used the first paragraph, which I read with them anyway.
Okay.
So, and it was, how does the author feel?
Okay. And feel free to shout Eduardo out too. I found that whenever I was teaching and kids crafted their own like student-led, because this is where your student-led discussions come from, I would shout them out, and it would encourage other kids to come up with a question because they won't be shouted out by Miss Young.
Yeah. I think I could take his question like even deeper by like asking like, how do we know how he feels?
And then that's when you're gonna direct them where? After we say, how do we know?
To then find text evidence. So like, what about, so So Eduardo's word was insecure. So like, how does the author feel? He feels insecure. How do we know that? And then he referenced back to the book because he talks about what was it? Because he talks about not feeling like he's a man and like not feeling like he's tough enough.
Now, insecure. What do you, in the context of a sixth grader, do you think that all of them know what, like, that's great at Wardo used that. I was really surprised. I was proud. Now, how can we make that question like kid friendly or understandable like for other kids, but we still keep the rigor? What do we need to do there with that new vocab word, so to speak?
So I shouldn't just give them the definition. I should like
and we can go back to the text, right?
So I guess like I could ask like for some, I guess like other thought, like when you would think about this, like what are words that like you think about and then like relate the words that they give me to the word insecure. Like, okay, so like a word for that would be insecure.
I think like this is where, because our kids struggle with context clues, so we can like pull out context in there. He struggles with not feeling tough. He struggles with like he wants to become manly or be a man. How do you think this person is feeling about themselves? And then that's when you use that synonymously with this. These feelings or these thoughts mean to be insecure. Yeah, he would have got a buzz, but because I was like, okay, come on, Eduardo. So we got our teacher model stuck in there and scripted in. Now let's go back to the CFS.
Okay.
Do you remember the CFS?
So the first step was to read.
Yes.
And then think about what you don't understand or what you need to remember.
Yes.
Then you craft your question.
Yes.
And then you answer your question by underlining.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what you're going to do, according to you. And feel free to give them an exemplar, like how I checked, like I did a CFU with you, with like when you told me the CFS, I was like, okay, so this question would be appropriate, right? And feel free to just do that with them. Take one hand, and say, hey, can someone give me an example using the CFS of? And so what I crafted from what you said, I'm going to quickly, I'm going to copy and paste this in an email so you can quickly make a slide before then. And that way you can have it projected as an anchor chart. And if you want to print it off for your ELs, you can quickly print that slide off for them and pass it out to them. How does that sound?
Good.
Okay. How do you feel about overall, like how the lesson went?
I think it went good. Like I want to work with them more on think and search. Because I feel like 0 period struggle with it too.
Okay.
So I feel like maybe it might need a reteach.
Okay.
But they're doing really good with right there.
Because they're so literal. The questions are literal and they're right there in the text. But that's what we want them to do cognitively. We want them to be thinking deeper and making analysis. So I think like you creating this CFS is a great start to have like a step-by-step process for kids to follow when they're thinking about annotating for these type of questions. And then furthermore, when we start introducing these questions as discussions to like guide the class. Okay. This is super reflective. Did you find it helpful?
Yes.
I'm glad. Well, I'm gonna let you have some time back. We got about 8 minutes, so you can get that into your slide and then do that.